My name's Andy Crook, and my mission is to help garage owners become more successful in business. And how I do that is I present a short training topic most weeks on one of the 5 pillars of business as I see it. This week, we're in the people of performance pillar, and we're talking about the NPS illusion, what black box thinking teaches us about feedback, failure, and real improvement. If you don't learn from failure, you'll repeat it. But if you fear failure, you'll never learn at all. Did you notice the red dots on the now famous image I used in the graphic for this training topic? Each of those red dots represents a bullet hole on an aircraft that returned from combat in World War II. At first glance, the obvious conclusion was these are the areas that are getting hit most, so we should add the armor there. That conclusion was wrong. The insight that changed everything came from the statistician Abraham Wald, who realized something critical. You were only seeing the planes that survived. The planes that were hit in other areas, the engines, the cockpit, the fuel system, they never came back. So they are missing from the data. Therefore, the correct conclusion was the opposite. Do not up armor where the bullet holes are, up armor where there are no bullet holes. Those untouched areas were the hits that caused the planes to be lost entirely. And why this matters far beyond aviation is that image is one of the most powerful visual lessons in feedback loops because it shows the data can be true, but still misleading. What you don't see can matter more than what you do see. Bias can hide the real cause of failure, especially if you're not analyzing all the data, especially what's missing. Now, you might be wondering, what's that got to do with my garage? I'd argue everything, because the independent garage industry is full of feedback that doesn't loop. We gather data, NPS surveys, online reviews, Google stars, but all too often, that data doesn't drive improvement. It only drives ego. And black box thinking changes that. So let's get stuck right in. And let's start at 30,000 feet, quite literally. In aviation, every incident is investigated. Black boxes record everything. All the data, the cockpit voice recorder, every system in. And when a plane goes down, the goal is simple. Find out what happened, learn from it so it never happens. The aviation industry doesn't blame pilots, it blames processes. It iterates, it tests, it adjusts, and then it tests again. In aviation, pilots report near misses. In fact, they are encouraged to do so and rewarded, not penalized, for doing it. Now compare that with healthcare, and this is where Syed pointed out. They have the opposite culture, where mistakes are hidden, not studied, and because of that, errors repeat and repeat. Instead of ownership, there is denial. So ask yourself this question. Is your garage more like aviation, or is it more like healthcare? Do you log every diagnostic misstep, every comeback, every lost customer, and review it without blame? Or do you brush it off with, oh, it's just one of those things? Because black box thinking is a mindset. Failure isn't a verdict, it's a variable. It's an opportunity to learn. And in garages, we actually have black boxes everywhere. It's just that we just don't use them. Every job that overruns, every no-show, every comeback is a form of data. The problem isn't that garages don't collect information. It's that we don't analyze it. Let's just take comebacks, for example. Some garages will record them, but very few will ask, what pattern do they reveal? Is it a vehicle type? Is it a certain job type? Is it a certain person? They don't ask, what was the shortcoming? Was it knowledge? Was it information? Or was it equipment? That's what I call the capability triangle. We all need knowledge, information, and equipment to do our jobs. If any one of those isn't quite up to it, there could be a problem. And the thing is, you can't manage what you don't measure, and you can't measure what you don't record. Improvement starts with data, not blame. As Syed says, the difference between success and failure isn't the absence of mistakes, but it's the ability to learn from. So let's talk about that shiny metric that so many garages love to share, the Net Promoter Score, or NPS score. It's a simple number that tells you how happy your customers are. But here's the trap, what I call the NPS illusion. NPS scores come from people who are willing to give you feedback. They are, by their very definition, biased. You're hearing from the vocal few, not the silent many. Now, Syed would call that selection bias, false signal that makes you believe things are either better or worse than they actually are. Most garages, customers who leave 5-star reviews are the ones that were delighted, and the ones that leave a 1-star review were somehow let down. The ones that didn't respond at all, they're probably your biggest data source, the silent majority, because silence is rarely satisfaction. It's at best indifference, and at worst disappointment. So ask yourself, do you spend more time analyzing your promoters than your detractors? But should you be analyzing those who have ghosted you? So let's take the idea a little bit further, a little bit deeper. The concept of feedback resolution, because feedback isn't useful unless it resolves. And that means it needs to travel the full loop. We need to capture, then clarify why, then correct, find out what we will do differently, and then confirm. A 4-stage loop, if you like. And then we've got to find out what changes worked, what changes didn't work. Now, the problem is most garages stop at stage 1. They capture, but they don't move on to clarify. And it's probably because they don't have a system to turn reviews or complaints into a process improvement. Here's an example. If a customer left a 3-star review complaining that their car wasn't ready on time, what would be the response in your business? A typical response was, we were busy that day. But that's not resolution. That's justification. True feedback resolution means asking why there was a delay. Because in system thinking and in business, every improvement shifts the constraint. And fix one problem without understanding the whole process may create a bigger one somewhere else. You have to be aware of this. And it's what I call the hidden cost of improvement. You identify one constraint, you put measures in place to correct it, but what you actually create is a constraint somewhere else. Every business exists to solve problems, even your own. And let's be honest, mechanics hate being wrong. Let's be fair, we're problem solvers. We're paid to be right. So when we're not, it kind of feels personal. And that's why black box thinking is really difficult to apply in garages. Because it's not a technical challenge, it's an emotional one. And it requires something called psychological safety. And Syed writes that aviation succeeds because pilots are allowed to fail safely. There's no stigma in admitting an error because everyone knows it saves lives. In garages, we need the same mindset. Fail, learn, share. Fail, learn, share. You can't create a high-performance team if everyone is hiding their mistakes. The culture of cover-up is the enemy of growth. So let's tackle the hardest shift, moving from blame to brainstorming. As the leader, you must accept blame. You must own it and learn from it. It's your responsibility. If a customer complaint becomes a witch hunt, no one speaks up next time. If a comeback becomes a conversation, there's a chance that everyone can learn. One of the most powerful things you can do is what I call a 5 whys review. So how it works, when something goes wrong, you challenge it. So if a comeback happens during the next team meeting, you as the team leader asks why up to 5 times. And it's been proven if you ask the right number of questions, why 5 times, that you will get to the root cause. So in the case from earlier on when the car was returning late to the customer? The wrong part was supplied. But why was the part wrong? Because the reg was mistyped. But why was it mistyped? Because the service advisor was interrupted. But why were they interrupted? Because the phone kept on ringing. And why was that? Because no one else was assigned to answer calls. And why was that? Because the phone doesn't ring in the workshop. Why doesn't suggest a person, but it suggests a process. You started with a problem and you ended with a system fix. A system fix? Quite simple. After a number of rings, insert number yourself, an answer phone kicks in at all times. Takes the pressure off the service advisor. That's black box thinking in action. It's humble, it's honest, and it's transformational. Not all feedback is equal, and black box thinking also warns against overacting to outliers. If one customer complains about the quality of your cup of tea or your coffee, that's not a process failure. But if 5 complain about Wi-Fi in the waiting area, that's a pattern. And black box thinking teaches us that not all data deserves action, but patterns do. The art is in distinguishing signal from noise, because chasing every single review will lead to chaos. But ignoring the patterns will lead to decay. The sweet spot is the structured response. Be consistent, be calm, but always be curious. Ask why 5 times. So there's this week's challenge. Find and open one black box in your business. It can be a comeback. It can be your reviews or NPS surveys. It can be technician time data. It doesn't matter which black box you open, but what you want to look at is, what does it reveal? Whatever the problem is it reveals, find the recurring pattern. Design a tiny test to change it and review the result over the week. That's it. 4 steps in becoming more successful. Capture, clarify, correct, confirm. Capture, clarify, correct, confirm. Tiny changes can result in massive results. And when it works, document it. And if it doesn't work, document it anyway, but keep iterating. Keep trying to find out what will improve it, because that's how learning compounds. But let me leave you with this. In aviation, every mistake makes it flying safer. In business, every mistake has the opportunity to make you stronger, but only if you're humble enough to learn. If you are willing to accept it and own it as the leader, that is the only way you can improve. So next time something goes wrong in your garage, don't hide it, highlight it. Ask why 5 times, but don't ask who. That's your black box moment, because business success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about owning it and then using it for fuel for growth. If I've made you think about comebacks or black box thinking in your business, or even if you think, hang on, that sounds good, read the book. See you next time. Thanks for listening.